I want to share with you a photo of a volunteer vine that joined me in my backyard space this year. And there it is. I sort of recognized the leaves as they began to inch out in January and February, and so I did not pull out the weed. I wanted to see where it would go. Many of you will recognize my vine surprise as a nasturtium. I, however, had to have someone identify it for me. But I did know a couple of things as it grew and grew. I loved the spunk of a plant that took the chance to peek through the cracks in poor soil. I loved the blossoms when they came, their delicacy and their color, and I'm glad I didn't pull it mistaking it for a weed. I gave it a chance to grow, and what pleasure it has given me, with its many bright flowers, as well as a visual for a sermon. So, a switch of gears before more vine talk. In 2001, the final requirement for completing my Master of Arts in Pastoral Studies was a major paper. Its purpose was to integrate what I had learned during my years in theological school. I chose to look at how theology was playing out in a community outreach project in Jefferson County, West Virginia. The term for this kind of theology is contextual theology. Theology lived out within the context of a community, whether that context be parish, town, county, whatever. So I interviewed people who are active in and knowledgeable about a local outreach organization. These individuals were mostly from Shepherdstown, West Virginia. From just their first names and their personalities described in the paper, anyone from the town who had been around any length of time would easily have been able to identify the individuals. My advisor wisely recommended that I use substitute names to protect the innocent, which I did. But it was so hard. The paragraphs didn't have the same meaning, the same punch, the same personality without the real names. I could no longer see the people who I knew and wrote about. The paper lost its humanity for me. You see, the real people were the story. The real people were in their names, and their names were those people. The Bible is full of names that have meaning, that give character, identification of a personality, or of a purpose of the individual. For instance, Jesus means God is salvation. Jesus came to save. Isaiah means the same. The name Jesus, is a variant of Isaiah. The angel Gabriel's name means God is my strength. Gabriel was an archangel who appeared to Daniel in the Old Testament. And by the way, Daniel means God is my judge. E-L means God. Today we celebrate yesterday's baptism of another L, Elise Claire Black. Elise means God is my abundance. Elise is a variant of the name Elizabeth. Elise is French. Claire means clear or light and is also French. Elise Claire, God's abundant life. Both of Elise's parents have French heritage. Elise's name tells a little of her story even before you meet her. Elise was born 11 months ago during COVID time. She joins her brother Charlie and her mom and dad as another sprout on the vine to enfruiten God's kingdom, to enlighten in abundance our world. There were about 20 of us gathered for Elisa's baptism yesterday in the midday warm but not hot sun in front of St. Paul's Chapel. It was breezy. The roses were so abundant that their fragrance was our incense. Above the baptismal font, as the service began, was a dove flying in and out of one of the trees, unsure if he would be intruding. And our baptismal candidate, in lace gown with long lace sleeves and lace heritage bonnet, and 10 most sweet in the pod toes. Sweet peas in the pod toes. She was joined by her family at the steps. It was pretty idyllic. Elisa's baptism was a living out of today's readings about love, about being the beloved of God, about being the beloved community of God. The readings from the Gospel according to John and from the new Johannine letter, from the first Johannine letter, are all about love. One technique that John the Gospel writer and the pseudonym John of the Epistle did was clue their listeners or readers to important messages by repeating words. For instance, in the first 17 verses of chapter 15 of John's Gospel, there are 9 iterations of the word love in some form. In verses 7 through 21 in the letter of John, there are 29 loves. No missing the point there. In the same verses in the gospel reading, there are 11 abides. In the epistle reading, there are 6. Abide in God's love. It's probably the message there. What do you think? The metaphor of vine and vine grower or vine tender, and the branches and the fruit is us, the church, with God vine grower, and Jesus vine as our lifelines, of course. God creator, Father, Mother tends the vine, the church. Jesus, the teacher, healer, is the vine. Jesus, who carries that which feeds, nourishes, carries life to make strong branches for us, whose job is to produce new fruit. We are fed what we need to be fruitful in doing God's work. And the work is the fruits of Jesus' teaching and healing ministry. What is baptism but an inclusion of one more possibility of doing God's good in the world, and the branches already there to be supported for the new growth? What keeps this vine and branches lively in intention, in attention, in love, and a care? Verse 12 of chapter 15 of the Gospel of John says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." 2 loves in that sentence alone. And the epistle writer, John, in his first letter, the 4th chapter, verse 21 says, "The commandment we have from God is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also." The same message of loving in the beloved community of caring, tending for each other. And we do this in spades when we welcome and foster the newly baptized and their families, when they grow with us under God's love and care. Elisa's family chose us to grow in love with God. It is a delight, an honor to have new life, new growth in our midst. Our job now is our job again is to support them in their lovely adventure in growth, to produce fruit in God's vineyard, which, of course, is to say, to abide in God's love with us. Amen.